Alright friends, please bear with me. This is, I think, the fourth or fifth time that I am attempting to record this video. I tried to record it several other times, and because of technical failings on my part, it just was stinky poo-poo, so I'm trying again. What Feasts at Night by T. Kingfisher is a direct sequel to What Moves the Dead, which I also really enjoyed. This follows our main character, Alex Easton, who is a sworn soldier of the nation of Galicia. Alex is returning to their family's hunting cabin with their valet, companion, friend, Angus. Easton and their companion, Angus, are returning to Easton's family hunting cabin to host another character from the previous book, Miss Potter. When Easton and Angus arrive at the cabin, it is derelict. It is in disrepair. It's clearly not been taken care of. Things are falling apart, and they find out that the caretaker has died, and the villagers believe that the caretaker was killed by a folkloric monster called a Moroi. And the Moroi is a woman who visits you in your dreams. She sits on your chest and she steals your breath. And that is the premise and kind of the entire story of this novella. The story is very to the point. There are not a lot of twists and turns. There are not a lot of surprises. You're not going to be shocked by a revelation. It is kind of exactly what you think it's going to be. And I don't think that that's a bad thing. I think that it works for this style of book, kind of a gothic horror, where usually in a gothic horror, things are exactly what you think they're going to be. So you can expect that from this. It is quite simplistic, and I think that T. Kingfisher's writing is typically simplistic, but it is also beautiful. It is also elegant in its simplicity, but it's also, for lack of a better term, it is evocative. It evokes the images, the feelings, the sensations, bringing the reader deeper into the story. Another thing that T. Kingfisher is really good at is shocking us and kind of taking us by surprise with some very grotesque imagery. It happens in this book. There are actually maybe 3 scenes that I can think of that are a little bit surprising in just how grotesque they are. Now, they're not gory. I would not say that they are gruesome, but they are grotesque to picture in your mind. I would say that it is strikingly similar to a scene in A Sorceress Comes to Call. So if you've read that, the imagery is very similar here, and it is very surprising because you don't typically anticipate Kingfisher's books to include anything that's particularly gross. So when it happens, it is a surprise, and it does add a little element of horror to the story. Another element to the story is the way that Kingfisher, or better yet, Easton, discusses PTSD. Easton has been to war, and they have seen the horrors of war, and that PTSD does translate into another aspect of horror in the novel. Easton has experiences where they are sort of transported back to the war and back to that mindset, and this does have an element of tension and anxiety and confusion for the reader, because Easton is somewhat used to these experiences, but we as the reader are not. And so when they describe these feelings, we have a sense of confusion and unease. I also really appreciated the description of PTSD as a place, not an event. Easton describes it as a place that always exists, but they're not always in it. I thought that that was a unique and kind of poignant take on PTSD. I really liked the introduction of the villagers. There are only a handful that we actually meet in this book, but the ones that we do meet are a really nice addition and kind of delightful. There is at least one skeptic, but many of the villagers are very superstitious. Having a community of people who all share the same superstitions, they are all wary, they all practice the same little wardings against evil, adds an element of eeriness and atmosphere to the story, which I think benefited this a lot. It definitely contributed to the overall creepy, eerie, strange, kind of old and misty, spooky atmosphere. The climax and finale of this book did take me a little bit by surprise in that it happened very quickly. Without giving spoilers, Easton kind of goes to sleep, the events happen, and then that's it. That's the end of the book. I don't necessarily think that that was bad, but it did catch me off guard. I thought there might be a little bit more. I was surprised at how quickly things wrapped up. But I also think that if this book were any longer, it might overstay its welcome. So I do understand the decision to cut things a little bit short. I did read a few reviews on this book, and I don't think that the reviews affected my opinion, but I did want to see other people's takes on the story. And something that I did see was that a handful of people didn't like how the conflict resolved. I personally did like the resolution, and I think that if you're reading and paying attention, like I said, this book is very straightforward, and if you take it at face value, the resolution is stated a couple of times to us, to Easton, to other characters. So if you accept that that is how the story will resolve, then it shouldn't surprise you. And I did find it to be a satisfying conclusion, although I understand why some people might not. Overall, I really enjoyed What Feasts at Night. I thought that it was a lot of fun, and it was a quick, satisfying little gothic horror. I gave it 4 stars, and I would recommend it to anybody looking for something a little bit spooky to read for Halloween.